Your brand may be staying on top of current trends, but are you agile enough to stay relevant, resilient, and successful as customers, competition, and the world continues to change at a breakneck pace? I'm thrilled to share the newly revised version of my first book, The Agile Brand. I'm calling it The Agile Brand Revisited. It's been updated to reflect our continually changing world, and it provides 7 principles that form the backbone of an agile brand, offering detailed insights and actionable steps for incorporating them into your business strategy. This is the book that started it all, and I'm excited to share it with you. It's now available in print and digital formats and available everywhere. Learn more by going to the Agile Brand Guide website at www.agilebrandguide.com. Welcome to Season 4 of the Agile Brand with Greg Kihlstrom, where we discuss business agility through customer experience, employee experience, and digital transformation. I'm your host, Greg Kihlstrom. The Agile World podcast is brought to you by TEKsystems, an industry leader in full-stack technology services, talent services, and real-world application. For more information, go to TEKsystems.com. To read more about the topics discussed on this show, you can go to my website at gregkihlstrom.com and read my latest articles or get a copy of my latest book, Meaningful Measurement of the Customer Experience, now available on Amazon and other retailers. Hi, my name is Greg Kihlstrom, and I'm the host of the Agile Brand podcast. Today, we're going to talk about the role of customer data and CDPs in the organization of the future. Tealium, which offers a customer data platform and serves over 1,000 businesses around the world, recently released a report entitled The Organization of the Future, in which this relationship between customer data and delivery on the promise of true one-to-one personalized marketing in a customer-centric, data privacy-focused world is discussed. To help me discuss this topic further, I'd like to welcome Heidi Bullock, Chief Marketing Officer at Tealium. Heidi, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Greg. Excited to be here.
Yeah, looking forward to talking about this with you. So why don't we start by you giving a little background on yourself and what you're currently doing at Tealium?
Yeah, sounds good. So currently I am the CMO at Tealium. And in that role, because CMO roles can vary from different companies, I own corporate marketing, product marketing, revenue marketing, including SDRs, and also importantly, customer marketing. And my background is different maybe than some CMOs. I actually started off in molecular biology. So that's a fun fact.
Nice. Yeah, that's not a lot of CMOs with a degree in molecular biology. So that's I'm curious how that's kind of translated into some of your work.
Yeah, I think it's actually in a lot of ways it's helped, and it touches a little bit on some of our conversation today. I definitely think it helps you be data-driven for sure, but I think just very structured in how you approach, business challenges. And I think that that's been a good skill that you learn definitely in the sciences.
Yeah, definitely. Well, today we're going to discuss that report I mentioned earlier and talk about 3 important aspects of it. So first, we're going to start with a little background on customer data platforms, or CDPs, and just why they're so important. So what makes an investment in getting better customer data and in customer data platforms so important from the perspective of a marketer that's competing for a customer's attention and tasked with achieving ever-increasing results?
Yeah. So just for your audience, we can just start with, what a CDP is, because I'm sure there's people that know, and then I'm sure there's people that are like, oh, geez, another technology, the platform I have to think about.
Another acronym for marketers, right?
Exactly. It's like just what the world needs. But if you just kind of take a step back, a CDP, it's got customer data in the name. So this is definitely a software platform that's focused on customer data. And at the highest level, it helps marketers, and I would say other teams, better understand their customer base and net new. So then you can ultimately do a better job with driving engagement and then, retaining valuable customers. And then I think at a technical level, these are the 3 things people have to understand. The best CDPs, in my opinion, have the ability to collect data. And when we say that, we mean collecting data from all different sources. So that could be client side or server side. So that could be, as an example, IoT devices. It could be a website, mobile, even a call center as an example. the CDP brings all that data together to unify it to say, yes, Greg is indeed Greg. We have all the right information on him. And then that information can then be activated out through those same channels. So it's just really collecting data, unifying it, bringing it together, and then delivering it. And I also think a key point of this, because they're not all CDPs are the same, but the ability to do that in real time, and we'll come back to that point because it's very important. That's what a customer data platform does. And in my mind, they're so important today because I think, just taking a step back, all of us want to be marketed, and actually not even marketed to, but engaged with in a way that's relevant, that's personal, that feels like a real conversation. And all of us know what bad marketing looks like, right? It's like, wow, they got my name wrong, or this offer
Right.
totally doesn't make sense. Or we have somebody at our company, and he's a gentleman and his name's Lindsay, but people always think he's a she. And so
Right.
he always gets these like ads. He's like, this makes no sense for me, right? So CDPs really are making sure that we can create those, I'd say, one-to-one relationships, but the key is doing it at scale, right? And it's based on data. Because again, most of the folks listening, we're not, mom and pop shops that, like a deli on the corner that might know you. We want to create that feeling for people, but we need to do it through data, and CDPs help us do that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so while we're talking about customer data, there's a lot of, whether it's regulations like GDPR or in California CCPA, or just general talk about consumer data privacy, and a lot of concern there, a lot of action happening there with third-party cookie deprecation, all of that stuff that, that's a topic for a whole other show. But,
Right.
What role does a customer data platform play in all of this, whether it's increased regulations or just this changing data privacy landscape?
Right. And you bring up a really great point, because I'm sure, folks are like, why are we hearing about CDPs so much now? And you touched on, really, there's three reasons, right? Where it's third-party cookie loss. And so there's a lot of marketers out there that are used to using maybe DMPs or purchasing data. And they're like, how am I going to have the ability to measure ROI and make sure that, I'm not losing valuable, like, breadcrumbs, right? So that's one. You touched on privacy. It's like, I think the world, in some ways, we've gotten so good at what we do that, a lot of regulations have come into play. And I think, people are looking for more of a balance there. And then lastly, the one you didn't bring up is the pandemic. And I think a lot of companies and organizations, I definitely even see it more in like conservative industries like financial services, pharmaceutical companies. It's like, oh my gosh, like, I need to have a strong digital presence, right? So those are the three reasons why we're seeing CDPs more now than ever. And specifically around privacy, that I think, is important, is going back to CDPs. The best ones help you collect data, and they help you collect zero-party and first-party data, which is data that the buyer themselves gives you. So it's more accurate, it's with consent. So it's not, it's basically, say, Heidi Bullock, my age, I give you the information I feel comfortable with, versus somebody's buying data and it's like, they might know I'm a female, I'm based in California, and it may be less accurate. And because CDPs support zero and first party data and that ability to collect it, they can use that data to then say, look, I can uphold Heidi's privacy preferences. She told me she really does not want to receive text messages. So because I'm providing that preference, a CDP can help propagate that preference throughout the journey. And what's key here is it's not just on one channel. Like, as an example, over email or over mobile, it can be on any of the channels, which is really, really important. So I want to make a key distinction that CDPs enable compliance. They don't make you compliant, because there is some confusion around that in the market, but they're really, really important for that reason. And I think more and more organizations are shifting towards more of a first party data strategy, which, I think at the end of the day is a good thing, because it's forcing us as marketers to do a better job marketing. You've got to make sure that you're providing value so that people want to give you that personal information back.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you touched on a few points here, but let's talk a little bit about from the customer perspective as well. I mean, definitely, CDPs help marketers not only, to your point, I think, do better marketing as well as be more compliant and more conscious of privacy. But from the customer experience as well, how do CDPs help enhance the customer experience?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to, again, making sure, in the simplest of terms, I think of a lot of marketing systems, garbage in, garbage out, right?
Yeah.
So if a company has outdated information on you, incomplete information, like not timely information, you can think of bad experiences that we've all had, right? So I can think of an example I see very frequently where you may be looking at a pair of shoes online and you're really excited about these, new Nikes. They're awesome. You want to buy them, right? And ultimately, you go into a store. Maybe it's Nordstrom. You buy those shoes, and then later you get targeted for those shoes with a discount, and you're like, "Wait a minute! Like I just bought those shoes. That's a bad experience, right?"
Right.
And a CDP prevents something like that from happening because that point of sale data would be connected to the digital channels. So you could say as a marketer, let's suppress Heidi from that ad because she just bought those shoes.
Right.
That's something that we don't want to have happen, right? Or another great example that I like is CDPs can connect data from call centers. So say, I had something that went really wrong. I called a call center. I have a complaint. You want, as a marketer, to have that information. So if you're sending out an email to that person that's in a segment, it's making sense. It's not like, hey, you're a super happy VIP customer. And the person's like, so I'm not. I just called your call center and was on hold and I'm pretty unhappy. So it's that ability to collect data from all of those key touch points, bringing that together in real time. So as a marketing team, you can understand things a lot more in real time and make better decisions on that. So the customers benefit from that because you just have that ability to be a lot more accurate, which matters a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And so many of the listeners of this show may either already have a CDP or maybe be starting out or somewhat started out implementing a CDP. But for those, those that haven't, the report I mentioned, the Organization of the Future, mentions 3 high-level considerations when starting with a CDP. So I want to discuss each a little more in detail with you. Let's start with the need to agree on top business outcomes. So what are some of the roadblocks to this being achieved, and what guidance would you have for organizations that are struggling to get on the same page with what they should expect from a CDP?
Yeah, I think where I see things kind of go wrong is exactly what you just touched upon. When somebody gets enamored with technology, and this is not just with CDPs, by the way, right. Those of your listeners who've worked for a long time, we've all done this, right? Where somebody's like, wow, marketing automation is going to solve all your problems. And I think a big takeaway from today's, podcast is, for me, technology is one of the pillars of the stool. It's a great one. There's better technology now than there's ever been, but you have to think about your people and processes. I know that's a really trite thing, people, processes, technology, but it's true. And I think a lot of companies and orgs, they get so enamored by technology and then they're like, oh, shoot, we haven't come together as a team to figure out, why are we buying this? What are the top use cases? And to your kind of key question, I think I like bringing key stakeholders together that are involved in the purchase. And I've done this, whether it's marketing automation, CDPs, different solutions. And it's like, what is the use case right now that's going to move an impact on, or make an impact on the business that's the most significant? Like, so for a lot of companies that I talked to last year, let me give you an example. It was retention. like in a pandemic, people are like, we need to retain the customers we have. Great. That's an initial kind of goal that we can rally behind, and getting key folks in the organization to agree to that. And then saying, now with that goal, like maybe we want to improve retention by 5% or whatever that is. what are the little use cases we're going to put together that can really help with that? Maybe it's something as simple as identifying key segments whose, utilization has dropped or their engagements dropped. How can we intervene earlier to present them with an offer of something of value that could improve that? And so I think really bringing that core team together, and again, I think that that's people from marketing, maybe it's customer success. I love involving IT, and then agreeing on that business goal. And you might say, we're going to start with retention and then we're going to move to other key goals. That's fine. But I think that's a piece that, believe it or not, is missed. I wish not so frequently, but I see that missed a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. The second consideration the report mentions for those that are starting with a CDP is the need to identify what customer data exists as well as where it resides, which seems, maybe for those in smaller orgs, seems simple and straightforward enough. But having worked with plenty of large orgs myself, I feel the pain of in this question. So, how does an organization get started here?
Yeah, I think out of all the questions today, this is my favorite one because I agree with you. And I am not going to sit here and lie and say, oh, yeah, it's just these two things and you're done. It's so easy.
Right.
I mean, this is one you're 100% right. There's no magic bullet. But what I have seen work, and I've done this myself, and just to level set with people, when you're dealing with large enterprises that are global, yeah, you're not doing a data audit in 2 days. It's like, that's not going to happen. But I think, again, you put this core team together. You then, I believe, this is what's worked for me, is you do a data audit and you basically say, where first and foremost are the locations of the data? And that might take a while, right? You might find that they're in different places. What are the data formats? Is there, there can be a variety of data formats. What are the, key subjects that we should be looking at? What are the types of data? Is it personal data, financial data? What does that look like? And then what are the recipients of the data? But I think kind of and what I just went through, it might be slightly different if you're like a financial institution or a pharmaceutical company or a retailer. That could look different, but basically just almost like an audit document where a team, they spend time doing this. And I think you're right. It's hard, but if you do this and have a thoughtful data strategy, you just will not lose doing that. It's like one of those things, like if you put in the work, you will get out the rewards, because what you don't want to have happen, especially with the privacy pieces that you've mentioned and the new data regulations, you don't want to think that, wow, our data is compliant, and then all of a sudden, surprise, somebody's accessing this legacy data system that nobody was aware of. That cannot happen. So I think while this can be something that takes time, it's a very worthwhile exercise. And then I think what is good is a CDP really helps you stay honest, and all the data touch points, how that data is being handled, and it's really great visibility.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and agree that, painful as it may be in some orgs, I mean, in addition to what you mentioned about data privacy, to go back to one of your earlier points, the customer feels this, right? They feel it when there's disconnected data. I mean, they definitely feel it when they call up an organization and they have to give the same information 10 times to 10 different people, but they also feel it when they get one message over email and another over text and another thing when they log into a mobile app or website, so it's like, I think it's necessary, right, to do, whether, and sometimes the most necessary things are the hard things, right?
That's right. Yeah. I mean, and I like to be honest with people, and I am like you, and I've gone through this many times, and yeah, I probably have more gray hair and wrinkles from that. But I mean, for real, it's not easy. But when you follow this, it just helps you, I would say, scale more effectively. It helps you grow. It helps you take on new initiatives much more easily than if you don't put in that work.
Yeah, absolutely. The third thing, as far as high level considerations, is the team that's ultimately going to own the data. So what should an enterprise look for when they're building out this team?
Yeah, I mean, this is another one where I'd love to say it's A, B, and C, or, it's like this perfect answer. This is my viewpoint on this, and this is reflected in the report. It's a little bit like, what are the skill sets you have within your organization? Like, as an example, some people have IT folks that like really love this. They have a passion for it. They understand data well. They're excited about it. That's amazing. Some people have a person like that resides in the marketing organization. I just think you really want to start with who really cares about data, understands it, they get the point of having a data strategy. And I would lastly say somebody that is definitely incentivized on making it work well. Because in a lot of cases, like if somebody say, as an example, I'll pick on marketing for a minute because I'm in marketing. If you assign it to somebody who's like, look, like they're creative, they like the brand, they like, that's kind of their, sweet spot, and they're not in details and they don't love data, that's probably not a good decision. So I always look for, where are the people that have the natural propensity to enjoy data projects and they actually get energy from it. They like it. I would say have somebody like that lead the charter and have them sort of like wear the hat and have the ownership, and then include, all the other key stakeholders, whether that's people from, data science teams, legal, marketing. I think that's kind of how I think through that.
Yeah. Yeah. So one more thing on the report, it also offers a few ways to look at organizational structure. And so kind of relating to the team question we just talked through, org structure in relation to customer data, there's definitely many ways to look at it. It introduces a center of excellence model and a CD ops or customer data operations team. I like that one. A CDP team, several others. So, while the best solution, as you were just kind of touching on, may vary based on several factors, what should organizations kind of be rethinking or reconsidering about how they're organized around customer data in order to be most successful?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I definitely have some preferences there. And I would definitely say for your listeners to check out the piece, because it does give you like all these different org structures that you can look at. And we interviewed and talked to a lot of companies. This wasn't just, us in a vacuum kind of documenting these. We were like, hey, how's this financial services company doing this in Europe? Or how's this other, organization doing this in Japan? So we tried to, we did this to hopefully save people time. But I personally like to think of, I can't think of really a team that is not going to be using customer data. It's so valuable. And so I really like sort of that hub and spoke model where there is a team that really owns it and thinks through it. And it's almost a service organization. But factors for me are really the size of your team and expertise. And we kind of touched on that because some organizations, they just have these brilliant people that love this stuff. And I think that's more rare, unfortunately. Then you have a lot of companies, you're like, wow, okay. So we need to rethink this one a little bit. So I definitely would say making sure, size of team and expertise matter. I would say MarTech sophistication, because again, some companies that we work with, they're so sophisticated and they're like, oh yeah, we have this, not a problem. And they understand the types of data integrations. They know how they want data flowing. So that's another factor. Really kind of who's owned customer data within the organization previously and how people want that to look like moving forward. Just because I think so many people will leverage this outside of marketing, that's again why I sort of like, CD ops. Like I like thinking of a team that, is a service center really. And then they can provide that for the different teams. And then I would say another factor is, at some companies, there is a team that really initiates the CDP purchase because they're the ones that have the most to gain or lose, right? Like they have a business goal tied to it. So those are like key factors, but I would really think about almost, who within the team has the skill set. And then how do people think about using customer data now and in the future? And that's important in the future. We've all seen how people buy CRM systems and they're like, oh, whoops, nobody thought about when we're international, how we set that up. Or, if you're doing account-based marketing, parent-child relationships, like these are things people have to think about. So I would say CDPs are no different. It's like, how do you want to use customer data now, but how could you foresee using it in the future? And that will, I think, educate how you want to structure your team.
Yeah, yeah. So in addition then to org structure, how about the philosophy of organizations? What are leaders in CDP adoption doing? How are they thinking? And what should organizations that are considering adopting more sophisticated customer data approaches be aspiring to?
Yeah, I would say that organizations that do this well today, and I will say that there are definitely organizations out there that are just, I mean, they've seen immense business value from using CDPs. It's pretty cool. I would say that they have a point of view. They have a sense of the value of their customer data and how they want to use it. And they've built out a map. They've said, look, our first goal, like I mentioned, we're going to focus on retention. Our base is critical. We're in a tough economic time. We want to make sure that we're not losing these really valuable, loyal customers that we've spent time acquiring and really marketing to and delivering services to for a period of time. We don't want to lose them. And so I think first and foremost is the companies that do well just have that viewpoint. When I see companies not doing well or struggling, it's because they fell in love with the technology concept, but they didn't stop to think like, wow, how are we going to be applying this internally? And how can we kind of start small. Like a lot of companies, I think, that are successful, they get that you don't have to boil the ocean. It's like, Greg, you've gone into companies, I'm sure, in the beginning, and you're like, wow, like it's kind of just like, it's like untangling spaghetti.
I'm not going to name any names, but yes, I've been there.
Right. But we've all been there where you're just like, wow, I need to just collect my thoughts. It's going to be a lot. And I think, the best companies, they're just like, nope, we're going to, make sure that we can get a unified view of our customer. That's the first thing. The second thing is we're going to work on shopping cart abandonment. The third thing is we're going to work on, this loyalty program. They just map it out. And then you can kind of, I think, tweak those things over time. But that's what I see. It can be just very, very successful for people. The ones that I think just kind of don't have a strategy, or they kind of, you can bring in so many groups and there can be so many opinions that I think that can actually, I would say, hinder folks. And I just think that you have to start somewhere.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, one last question before we wrap up. From your perspective, what's one of the most important takeaways from the Organization of the Future report we've been discussing? And why do you think it's important to marketers and business leaders?
Yeah, I think one of the most important takeaways is, again, and it's not unique to CDPs, we're just kind of making it very clear, is that technology by itself is not going to solve all your problems. Gosh, I wish it would.
Yeah, I know.
I would be so much happier. It's a piece of it, and it's a great piece, but you really have to equally put in the time and energy into who on your team is going to own this. How are they going to operationalize this within your organization? What are the use cases you're going to start with? And I think that in this report, we just lay that out almost just like a recipe book to make it easy for people. Because again, I get it. Everyone's busy and has a day job. So I would say that that's the most important takeaway.
Wonderful. Well, Heidi, thanks so much for joining the show. For those listening, what's the best way for them to keep up with you and what you're doing?
Yeah, I think, for me personally, anyone can add me on LinkedIn. Happy to connect with folks there. And for all things Tealium, we put out a great blog that really talks about, top things in the industry, everything customer data related. We also highlight a lot of great customer examples. So I always think that that's, exciting. Say you're in retail, it's like, hey, I want to see how, other people are approaching this. And I think that's a great resource for folks.
Wonderful. Well, again, I'd like to thank Heidi Bullock, Chief Marketing Officer at Tealium, for joining the show. Thanks for listening to the Agile Brand with Greg Kihlstrom. Talk with you next week. Thanks again for listening to the Agile Brand with Greg Kihlstrom podcast, brought to you by TEKsystems. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to subscribe on your podcast channel of choice and leave us a rating so that others can find the show more easily. You can access more episodes of the show at www.theagilebrand.show. To get a copy of my latest book, Meaningful Measurement of the Customer Experience, visit my website at gregkihlstrom.com. Until next week, stay agile.